imagination and practice. Just very quickly on my background, both Lana and I, we grew up in a family that talked a lot about social justice. I'm a lecturer here in psychology. Almost all my research is in tandem with community groups. I've always had a very ambivalent relationship with the university in the sense of wanting to be out there and seeing that the desirability of public discourse, public conversations, public action, but loving the intellectual moments and the thinking through and the sense that this place is somewhere where we can almost rest from that and really work out sometimes what needs to be done. Founding member of the Point Chevalier Transition Town, and I'm currently the coordinator of the Faculty of Science Sustainability Network here, Clark's here from the network today, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So essentially, I'm going to follow a little bit up on Jeff's idea actually. I want to say that the social world is a complex space. And essentially, there are two really key parts of this. One is the imagination. Lana's talked about his ideology, crazy, beautiful ideas, I think Jeff said. If you think about it, when you get up in the morning, you have an imagination about what you're going to do. You have an idea in your mind. You have a blueprint. You all got up and thought, I'm going to the Berries of Change week. You didn't get out of bed and put on your suit and go down to the Bank of New Zealand or whatever. So in other words, we carry in our minds our idea of who we are and what kinds of actions we do as that kind of person. So we have that at the individual level, but we also have that at the cultural level as well. What kind of people are we? What kind of society are we? Do we think that this is a society of survival of the fittest? If we do, we think we need to have a retirement fund, we need to send our kids to the best schools possible and then pressure them, as we heard from Sam, to get their good NCEA results, because no one else is going to do it for you, baby. So if we have that kind of mentality that we really have to work for ourselves and acquire and accumulate wealth, then that collectively is how we practice. So practice is you get on your bike or you get on the bus or you go to this place to work and you work hard for school or you don't and you protest and you don't and so on. It's all those different actions we're doing in the real world. And of course these two are constantly intertwined with each other. So these two together are what we call the social world or society. But the thing is, there's a couple of other elements to these. One is the physical world. So for example, we can pull fossil fuel out of the ground and burn it away merrily, but the physical world's reacting to this. So the social system can stay stable while we do that, up to the point that the physical world reacts in ways that threaten the system. So once we have masses of big storms and sea level rise and droughts and we have climate refugees and so on, it's major instability to the system because the physical world will do what the physical world does, no matter what people think is going on. But the other really cool thing, and I guess this is sort of where my speciality comes in, is human flourishing. Because systems aren't stable when people aren't being looked after. Because people people want to flourish, and I don't mean want to in a sort of intellectual way. I mean, as evolved, biological, embodied creatures, we strive to be who we can be. So we know, for example, that people absolutely want to belong. They want to be part of warm human relationships, and people will do anything to get that. They will try to be in that. When they're separated and kept apart from each other, it feels wrong. There's an agitation in it. Justice is another thing. There's tons of research, if you need research, that says people are highly sensitive to fairness. So when they feel the system isn't fair, the system is unstable because people are driven towards that. They're looking for that. They're sabotaging it in various different ways. So in other words, there's these two kind of things that can stabilise or destabilise the system depending on whether the system is serving human flourishing and is actually compatible with the real nature of the physical world. So, change happens when practice happens, when we start to do things differently, and sometimes this can be technological, sometimes it can be acts political, like for example when the Soviet Union collapsed, that meant that Cuba no longer had access to imported oil and had to ride Chinese bicycles. I assume that's a picture of one. or major natural events, like that's just Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii and so on. These things sort of force a practice change, no matter what your mind's doing, if you like. But it also happens when collective imagination changes. So something like Marxism, for example, could only flourish because there was so much unfairness in the system that it made sense to people. You know, it met that sort of human flourishing need, if you like. People gravitated towards it. Same with the women's suffrage movement, because it's just kind of just straight out dumb and unfair for women not to have the vote. Something like the suffrage movement could create that imaginative space and started to seem really viable. And as a result of that, we now have women in Parliament. And look who we've got up on the screen here. Sue and Lila looking fabulous. And I especially love this one. Nandor and Sue, like, gone with the wind and door. Imagine fabulous. So over time, that sort of imaginative change changes practice. So we've sort of got a cycle, and just very, very briefly to look at climate change in regard to that, you get scientific evidence, which I'm calling imagination, that's not sort of practice per se. You get the development of alternative energies, questioning of our way of life, international agreements, greater practice, and all of these kind of feeding on each other with roles in both the mind and the body, how we're doing things. Now, one thing I want to make a really key point that I don't think has been made explicitly today is that change in systems is unpredictable. Jeff sort of said this, but I want to explore this a bit more. What's really key is that change can happen suddenly. Now, what this graph shows here is this is chronological, 1767 through to 2015. Up this axis is the 50 states in the United States. And each of these coloured bars represents a change in some kind of policy or legislation. So we'll just look at the green one, which is interracial marriage became legal, right? Now if you look at that, what you see here in 1787, a few states made it legal, then a big nothing period, then a few more, then a big nothing, then a sudden rise in the number of states where interracial marriage was legal. If we look at the second to last one, this is marriage equality, same-sex marriage. You can see here absolutely nothing until 2005, and then all of a sudden it became legal in 36 states. Now, the reason I show that graph and what I want to point out in regards to this is it's a big mistake to attribute the change to the last most visible action. Anyone here who's been involved in any sort of form of gay rights, do you want to say it was those people in 2005 that finally got the government's change that did it all? I don't think so. So what we get is this huge time where apparently nothing is changing, but what we're working on is imagination and practice at the micro level, which is why I basically disagreed with that video, because I think we are always building a capacity inside ourselves and our conversations and so on, sort of primed and ready for that moment when something opens up and we can make that what looks like the real change, but what we've actually been preparing for. I'm going to time, Rebecca. Yeah. Okay, and another really key point. The system that we will create has never existed before. And this is such a crucial point because so often when I'm talking about things, people say, can you give an example? Well, no, actually, I can't. Because what is happening now, what will happen is brand new. So it's things that I blat on about, for example, participatory democracy. I actually think we can have an entire social structure that works from the ground up. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it's possible. So even in big, complex societies, we can have people at the ground level thinking about the kind of world they want to live in, feeding into systems and that going right through. Now there are little bits and pieces of that, but we don't have that on a large scale, but it doesn't mean we can't have it. So things are always changing and never be shut down by people saying it's never been done before. Okay, so what do we do? Well, we work to build imagination and practice in alignment with the physical world and human flourishing. And remember, if you've got human flourishing and the physical world on your side, the system will change. It's just a kind of inevitability. It's when it will change and how it will change, what it will change into is the question, not that it won't change. So how do I live my theory? Well, I mostly work on nurturing the imagination, like what kind of world is possible. A lot of my teaching and writing is all about that. As I think Rowan mentioned, I wrote a book, Psychology for a Better World. I'm doing these infinite game workshops, and my really core message is one of trying to get people to trust in, A, the feeling that a lot of other people are in this game too, you know, that they're part of a community, whether they can sort of see it directly or not, and that acting for core values and for human flourishing is going to make a difference. It's like this kind of faith. Like I said, being on the right side of history, that kind of idea. That will work, even if right now it seems like nothing's happening. Micro examples, again, really interested in participatory democracy. The Faculty of Science network, which I've established and so many wonderful people are keeping alive, that network idea, lots of small projects coming together, not making a decision, even that group, which is, you know, only a few dozen people, not making a decision up the top, and now we all have to work for the one thing. Now, I know that goes a little bit against, I think, what Lila was arguing there, so, you know, that's something that you could tease out later this afternoon. Western Springs Sustainability Panel, got a couple of people from that, similar model, network model. Everybody working together, coming together, seeing what we can do. And I'm a member of a transition towns, there's a couple of people here from that as well. I'm also really big on supporting other people's initiatives. At a very, what I tend to believe is I lead a few things and I'm sort of hardcore on some things, but I try to go to the really big things. So I go to the TPPA march or I go to the climate change march without being really, really active in that particular sphere. So, because those things need huge numbers of people, and then we can do our own really intense things as well. So I think it's important to really support the huge things because they're the collective imagination really, really coming together. So what would be wrong with my theory? Well, I'm all about this kind of nurturing and embracing all the offerings that people bring as part of that whole participatory democracy sort of thing I have going on. But sometimes I wonder, do people need more of a nudge or a push, or maybe a bit of bullying or emotional pressure to join with a unified movement to transform the system? And I think, I don't know if it was Lila who said this, but somebody said, and I've been thinking about this, is one thing is my theory of change. The other thing is the way I'm prepared to act as a human being in this world. And to some extent, I kind of don't care. I know it sounds awful, but we might need to bully or emotionally pressure people because I'm just not going to do it. And the sort of that bottom line level where what can I, as a human being, actually bring myself to do. But personally, I actually don't believe we need to do that anyway. Because we're on the side of human flourishing. If you just try and bring that out of people, people will join up. Thanks very much.